how's it going? It seems you have a very nice looking studio behind
Thanks,
you.
man. Thank you very much. I actually built it at my house about 12 years ago, and I've been recording bands for most of my life at this point. I think about 18 years. So it's
Um,
it just made sense to have it at home. That way I could just constantly work because it takes a lot of work to do it. So
yeah, that's fantastic. It seems amazing. Like having studio at home, are you like, have you experienced this sort of paradox when it comes to the whole situation of having your work at home in terms of productivity and in terms of, just meshing the two mentalities in terms of being at home and being at work? And do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Uh,
I know exactly what you mean. That was a little tough at the beginning because, I tend to be like obsessive compulsive, especially when it comes to audio.
yeah,
So it's kind of, it was tough for me to turn off my brain and shift gears from work life to home life.
yeah.
But, I designed the studio to look completely different from the rest of the house. The studio is red and really bold, and the rest of the house is like green and gray. So, and I've kind of just made a pact with myself. Whenever I'm done for the day, I turn everything off, shut the door,
Yeah,
and I'm done. So I just, I've learned how to make that transition pretty well.
that's fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
Obviously, you mentioned, something very interesting in terms of, having obsessive compulsive tendencies and stuff like that. And I very much relate with that. So I really want to, to ask you about that as well. Like, do
Sure.
you have this sort of moments where, you might have, finished working for the day and you might be, at the whole part of your day, and do you have this moment like, oh, I really need to fix that, or I really need to tweak that in this session
Oh
that
yeah.
I did? And
Yeah.
like,
Like, for example, like that snare drum is driving
yeah,
me crazy and you just can't get it out of your head. And so, I mean, sometimes it'll drive me a little crazy, but I've learned to basically take my time, and like whenever my work time is going on, like I do my
mhm,
work then, and whenever I'm done, I leave it because if you go too hard, too long, you
mhm,
end up losing productivity, and it ends up taking longer to do the project ultimately.
mhm,
So I've learned the diminishing returns law. I've
mhm.
learned kind of where to draw the line, be like, nope, I think we're done for today. So
Yeah,
it's just, but it has been a learning experience for sure. I mean, early on in my career, I was, working way too much and very frustrated because of the fact, you're working too much. You don't have, your ears aren't fresh. You don't have the energy to continue
yeah,
to keep going. And ultimately the product suffers. So I've just kind of learned that balance.
yeah. I definitely can agree that it's quite the experience and the learning curve to sort of want to overcome, your initial instincts, especially when you realize that they're not very beneficial towards what you do. Uh,
Absolutely.
but what would you say is like, the most difficult and most challenging transformation that you've experienced in this field in terms of, changing yourself and changing your, instincts towards, doing what you do or whatever aspect of it might be, you
Wow.
know?
There's so many facets that go into recording, from, pre-production all the way to mixing and mastering and everything in between. And there's an infinite amount of variables in between
Mhm,
those spaces.
mhm,
So whenever I started my career, I was really trying to be scientific with it,
mhm,
as in like, okay, always boost here, always cut here, always compress
mhm,
this much, always automate, And so I was trying to follow all these scientific rules, and it ultimately ended up being more frustrating than anything because the product wasn't sounding how I wanted it to sound in my head, or
mhm,
comparing it to another major release.
mhm,
And I was frustrated. And whenever I kind of started to make the transition from treating it like a science and more like an art form,
mhm,
as in like, don't be afraid to break those rules. And as soon as I started to do that and get way more creative and let a little bit of that
mhm,
control go,
mhm,
it became way more fun. And then just everything started to sound better and gel better together. And I think, the artists that I have worked with through the years are ultimately happier, and I'm ultimately happier as well. But that would probably be the biggest learning curve for me, is going from that scientific mentality. Now you have to learn the rules,
mhm,
but
mhm.
I think I was afraid to break them in the
Uh-huh.
process. So now it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to turn 8K up 12 dB on the snare drum, like there's no law that says I can't do that. If it sounds good, I'm going to do it and roll with it. And you know, that momentum, I think, and that creative impulse is just contagious.
Yeah, yeah, you put it so well. And, you know, it's so interesting to hear your perspective on this because, especially in terms of mentality, I know, you know, that we spoke for just a few minutes, but I'm just hearing a lot of things that I can relate with in terms of, you know, you said that you initially been very scientific. Obviously, you know, you've mentioned, I guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you're quite the perfectionist when it comes to things that you're working on.
Oh yes.
And you know, I would love to hear your perspective on this because, you know, being this sort of a personality myself, and especially when it comes to, you know, establishing career in music, I found it very difficult when I was younger. Obviously, you know, I've tried to be in a band and I tried to go to that route in terms of being a musician, but
Right.
I've never been able to sort of um, overcome this, you know, this instinctive state of mind where I have a specific, you know, idea in terms of how things need to be done and how things need to sound and how things need to evolve. And I
Mm-hmm.
found it very difficult to compromise that and sort of comply with other people that are involved into this process. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and I would speak to that like um whenever I'm producing a band. So I'm not, you know, an artist who is in the band, you
Yeah.
know, because I'm a guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm just producing a band, then I tell them, I was like, guys, like you're here to work with me because you know, I've done this for a long time and I have a very specific like set of expectations and I have you know, a very crazy work ethic sometimes. And I always allow my artists, you know, full creative control, but I always like to steer them in the direction of where I hear the project going, you know, as far as my vision is concerned for how I want it to sound. And then taking their vision and trying to meet and compromise in the middle. And sometimes that road to get there can be a little, you know, dicey,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that there's a trust that has to be established between
Mm-hmm.
the artist and myself as a producer. And you know, I don't just take any client. I really want to get to know the band that I'm working with or the
Mm-hmm.
artist that I'm working with, try to establish that working relationship before we even jump in and start recording,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to know how it's going to be whenever I say, hey, that should be an A instead of an E,
Yeah.
or that take is out of tune, or let's use this snare drum. I want to know if there is going to be like pushback, or you know, if there's going to be like that malleability, if that's a word, if there's
Yeah.
going to be like flexibility
Yeah.
with how they feel about their art and their music.
Yeah.
So typically, man, it's been pretty easy, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because I run a really like tight ship in the studio and I drive really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had some artists get, you know, a little frustrated here and there, but ultimately we're on the same page as producer and artist,
Mm-hmm.
working towards the same vision. And I think that once you get past, you know, the initial like disagreement, if
Mm-hmm.
you could even call it that, once you get past the speed bump, and you just keep that energy and momentum rolling, it works really well. So I really haven't had too many difficult, you know, issues or complications when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to that kind of approach. But yeah, man, I do like it my way.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I know what you mean. And you know, what about when it comes to, you know, your role as a musician and when it comes to the process of creating music with other people?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any differences when it comes to this aspect of your activity? Because obviously, you know, having clashing ideas and being perceptive towards other people's understanding and towards other people's ideas in terms of how things should be done can be, you know, quite a challenging process if you are not, you know, very communicative and open to discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think communication, you said
Yeah.
communicative. I think communication is one of the most crucial components when it comes to being a songwriter, and then working with other people who have input and ideas. Like in All the Pretty Things, we typically have each come to the table with a different ideas, be it a guitar idea, vocal idea, and we start to build around that. And we try to give each other equal amount of input, and we're really flexible with everyone's voice, because we want everyone to feel like they contribute, and we want everyone to have a part in the creation process. Sometimes it can be like I said, a little difficult if it's like, I don't dig that guitar part for the verse, or I don't like that drum pattern there. But we've all done this for so long. I've been making music for over 25 years, and I think everyone else is pretty much in the same ballpark with their experience level. So we know what we want and what we don't want. So people aren't throwing ideas to the table that really don't belong or really don't make sense. So, and we try to be as diplomatic as possible. Anytime that there's a great idea, we really support it. And anytime there's an idea that needs more development, we try not to be dismissive. I try not to be dismissive of it. I definitely want to hear, okay, if the idea is not working, how can we take this and morph it into something that's going to serve the song, because it's ultimately all about the song, the end goal, the vision. Like that's where I funnel my focus to.
You said it so well, and it just reminded me of that saying, which was like something like respectable but not compromising. Which I think it very well describes what you said. Obviously, you have to be respectable and open, but you can't compromise the quality of the end product in the end of the day if you don't think it's good enough, I guess.
And man, I have really high standards, and it ties into my personality, I'm sure. But I really, like I said, I push everyone that I work with hard, be it the band that I'm in, or the musicians I'm performing with, or the musicians I'm recording. But as long as everyone's on the same page of we're trying to get to this end vision, this end goal, and that's where you have to like put your ego aside sometimes, including mine, and go, all right, well, this is the right thing. Let's go with it and make hard decisions and roll.
So well said. Yeah, so well said.
Yeah.
So obviously, you have very strong role as a musician. You have very active role as a producer as well. Can you walk me through the process and the moments which defined in your mind that you want to be a musician, or you want to be a producer, and just understanding and realizing that these roles are applicable to your personality and your qualities, and so on. I'm just interested to hear your perspective, and whether you think that there are any defining moments that were like, you were like, oh, this is what I'm good at, this is what I want to do.
Yes, I definitely know the moment that I wanted to play guitar in a band. I think I was 15 years old, and I had gone with a family member to a concert at a venue that was out of town, like an hour outside of Wilmington. And I was a kid. I was basically, I think I was in 8th or 9th grade, one of the two. So I was young, and I had never really played guitar, but I was interested in music because I liked punk rock and just classic rock and such from growing up with my parents' record collection. And then I got into skateboarding, so there came the punk rock and kind of the metal vibe. Went and saw this band. It was this band called the Marvelous Three. Their singer songwriter, his name was Butch Walker. You may have heard of him. He's a mega producer, and he started this trio called the Marvelous Three back in like the late 90s. Well, they put on this show, and it just blew me away. And I remember looking as a 15-year-old kid at the stage going, this is what I was like, I want to be up there. Like, that's what I want to do. And so I got a guitar the following Christmas. Thank you, Mom and Dad. And then I just became obsessed with it, tying back into my personality. And it kind of took over my life, and I just never stopped. And then, I moved through high school and college, played with multiple bands, started to get hired gigs as a guitarist. I got a big hired gig with a band out of Wilmington called He Is Legend, kind of a heavy metal band or a heavy rock band. Wonderful people, great music, killer guitar playing. And and after, I think it was like 2006, 2007, we came off of the road and we all had a pretty good payout. So I was like, I think I want to get into recording. And so I remember getting on eBay and spending an egregious amount of money at the time to get like a very low level Pro Tools setup.
Yeah.
And I remember when it all arrived at my apartment, I was like, how do I hook this all up? This is pre-YouTube, pre-smartphone. So there was very limited education when it came to engineering. So I kind of started from the ground up and just hit up all these local bands. And I was like, let me record you for free. I want to do it. And that's kind of how it started. And I just fell into it and it became my life. And now this is what I do.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, great, man. It's wonderful.
And obviously many people are having this, dream, especially, tying this up to, the memory that you've mentioned when you watched the band and you dreamt of being there and doing it yourself. And obviously many people are having this dream, but not many people are getting to a level where, this becomes reality. So I'm interested to hear, what's the comparison in terms of your expectations, in terms of how you imagine it to be, and what it was when it happened for you. Why? Was the emotion that you've experienced when you got to the stage for the first time and being this, guitar player on stage, was this similar to what you have imagined it to be when you were younger and when you watched this show?
Yeah, as a young kid, you're always kind of full of ego, and you've got a bunch of angst and kind of like fuck you energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least I did. I did from my punk rock, upbringing and classic rock roots. And I remember, maybe the first couple of years as a guitar player and getting decently good pretty fast. I remember being a little egotistical, and I'm sure that some of my early bandmates would probably say the same. But I figured out really quick that that is not the way. And I started to basically become more humble and try to serve other people, and I think that when I figured out that, that's when things started to get doors started to open for me. Now that being said, I think I went and saw that show as a 15-year-old kid, and by the time I was 18, I was on that same stage at the same venue playing with my band. And I remember looking out into it was a House of Blues. So, big venue, massive venue for us as high schoolers. But I remember looking out into the crowd and I was like, this is what I've been working for. And it's a very gratifying feeling. And it was just something that I was, a dream come true scenario, but it was like, there's more out there. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep going. And so, obviously it was a wonderful feeling, but I think it lit more of a fire in me to continue to do it,
Let's see.
And I'm grateful for everyone and anyone who's helped contribute to not just my career, but, my music and hopefully, it's not something that comes across as being vain or egotistical. I want people to enjoy it, and I want to ultimately affect people with the music that I create, either as a producer or an artist. I want it to affect them emotionally. Like, that's my number one goal, is to elicit emotion out of you, the listener, not to be the best guitar player, not to have the best snare sound. I want to make you feel something. And because that's why I got into music, and that's why I am still into music, is because of how it makes me feel.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I, again, can so strongly relate with that, because, I've always said that I've fallen in love with music because of its concept, where you can affect positively other people by expressing yourself, and it's such a, it's such a magical concept for me. So beautiful, the idea of just making everything around you better through who you are as a person and just creating something beautiful out of it. So
there's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that too, especially if you're on a bigger stage. Not like literally, but you have a wider audience. If you have a wide audience, I mean, you can affect how they feel based upon your next single or your next song. If they love your band, And I mean, there's some responsibility there, and there's also a lot of power and energy and just vibe, like there's something magical about creation and seeing your creation come to life, and then having people not just respond to it, but respond to it in a positive way, and see how it affects their lives in a positive way. Anytime somebody would reach out to me and be like, dude, this song, saved my life or made me feel this way or that way, like it's a wonderful feeling for sure. And it makes me feel like I've made the right decisions in my life to get where I'm at.
Absolutely. Like, were you always like naturally perceptive of this concept in terms of, music and its essence and its effect on people? Or was there like a moment or, something that influenced you understanding this?
So was there a moment where kind of ties back into whenever I was younger. I was younger, there was still that like egotistical component to it.
Yeah.
Where you're kind of more or less, I want to play the best solo or whatever. Yeah. But I think I probably figured that out whenever I was maybe in college. Like that's when I was like, okay, it's not just about me. It's not just about our band. It's about the community. It's about everyone working together. Rising tides raise all the ships. And instead of working against, your other, rival bands in town, or instead of trying to tear each other down and discredit, I think the way is to build up and to edify and to give credit.
That's such a great thing to say, and such a great thought to endorse, because as I'm sure you're aware as well, I think one of the biggest problems in the music scene in general is that many bands and artists are trying to just compare themselves to each other and trying to be better than each other, and a sort of creating all of this competition between themselves, rather than just understanding that it's about the same thing. It's about just creating good content and creating good music and affecting people positively, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the way.
Yeah. What would you say is like your most unforgettable moments of your music career? Something that every time someone asks you to tell about what you do and to tell about your success as a musician, you're like, this is the moment I'll always remember.
Oh wow, I've got several of those,
okay.
And I'm gonna pick one that ties back into the first show I went to as a kid. 15-year-old watching Butch Walker.
You can share a few, by the way. Just
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So fast forward, I think I was out of college, and my band at the time was recording in Atlanta with a producer named James Salter, and we were in this park of studios in Atlanta. There was like Outcast, Stankonia Studios. There was Southern Tracks, which is where we were. And then across the way, there was Butch Walker's studio. Butch was the front man that made me go, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
So as we wrapped guitars for the day, and James, the producer we were working with, was like, hey, man, come with me. And so we hop in his car and we cruise across the compound. And we roll up to Butch's studio, and Butch answers the door. And I'm like, whoa, dude, be cool. I was really taken back. I was a big fan of his band, the Marvelous Three. They were kind of a power pop trio that had a really awesome sound. Made one of the best records that I will say to this day, one of my favorite records. But Butch, he allowed us to come in, and the dude took us on a tour of his studio and showed me like his house, which was above it. It's just the coolest guy ever. And that's what it, not only, you're meeting someone you idolize and look up to, but you see that there's a humbleness there that is just, he did not care that I was a nobody. Like he was so gracious and so kind. And I've always had an immense amount of respect for him as a songwriter before that, and as a performer before that. But after that moment, I was like, he's a good human being too. And that's what I was like, yeah, I need to step up my human game, my human being game. And it was a very serendipitous moment, and it will forever resonate for sure with me. But you know, like I said, I've got multiple other moments, you know, be it like almost dying in the Midwest, you know, in a van and trailer accident. You know, there's so many things where you're like, oh my God, like just crazy moments. You know, I played the Superdome in Detroit with 1,000 Foot Crutch once upon a time. And I think there was, you know, like 50,000 freaking people there. It was unreal. Wow. You know, that's like an illusion. There's so many people there. So yeah, man, just so many cool moments and so many experiences that I would never trade for anything.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you know, sort of another question, sort of, you know, in this vein, I'm very interested to hear what would you say, you know, like the songs or the projects that you've worked on that you're really proud of? Like, what are those songs? So, you know, again, the projects that you've worked on that you are really happy that you were part of and that bring you like really great satisfaction that you've been involved in them.
Oh yeah, man. You know, I've done hundreds of records. Most of them are local and regional artists, but I have worked with some labels. I did a label band for Eulogy Recordings. This band was from Alabama and Florida. They were kind of like half from one and half from the other state. They were called The Offer. And we did a record called 33 Days. This was like 10 years ago. And that record came out so well and sounds so good. And I was so proud of it because that was like my first really big label project. And I wanted to really knock it out of the park. So I'm really proud of that one. I've worked with an artist here locally. His name's Justin Cody Fox. And I think I've done about 3 records for him. And everyone has just gotten better and better and better. And he just signed a distro deal, so I'm really proud of that project. And then I've been working with, you know, doing our stuff. You know, our stuff is definitely, it's almost like the culmination of all of these decades of experience coming together. I'm really, really happy with it. I'm happy with several metal bands that I've worked with throughout the years. One called Arbor Vital. I've done a record for the band Apprehended, which was great. I mean, just there's so many great bands, great records, great people. It's tough to try to like quantify it and present it. But, you know, the thing about making music with people is that, you know, they're coming in with their baby and their idea and their vision. And I get to participate and share in that creation process. So during that, you know, melding, you just make lifelong friends. You become lifelong friends and you establish these great relationships that you would have never, ever normally established. And I mean, my best friends in the world are because of music. And I like I said, I would not trade it for anything. Not just the creation process and the work and the product, but the relationships, I think, are where it's at.
That's so well put. And you actually, you know, sort of answered my next question because I wanted to ask you, you know, what's your favorite part of the process of both creating music and producing music? You know, what's the aspect that you enjoy the most? And I guess you answered that in terms of especially producing.
Technically, there's always this moment, you know, just when you're working on a song, there's always this breakthrough moment when everything kind of comes together and it's like everything's a little cloudy and then it all comes into focus, you know. And that could be like putting this vocal part here or you know, like finishing a guitar solo that just makes everything crystal clear. And like that's a gratifying moment. It's when everything really clicks together and then you look around the room and everybody's got a smile on their face or is jumping up and down and high-fiving, you know, like so that's that makes it worth it, man, you know. And there's a lot, like with our record, with All the Pretty Things. I mean, we were down, I think we were in the studio every night except for a few nights for like 4 straight months.
Whoa.
You know, and so it was a ton of work, and there was a grind that happens, and you just kind of have to ride through that low point. But whenever everything starts to take off and everything starts to take form and come together, it's just it's unlike anything else I've ever experienced.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, like,
yeah, man.
So, you know, we've already clarified that, you have very, high standards, and, you're even perfectionist when it comes to the things that you're working on. And I'm curious to hear, like, do you easily experience satisfaction in terms of the work that you do, or is that a difficult process in terms of, having the mindset of always improving something, always changing something? Like, what's your state of mind when it comes to this?
Oh man, like as far as like capturing and then like editing, is that
Everything, in terms of everything that you're working on,
oh,
right?
oh
Yeah.
yeah, man. Like I love to tweak variables, and the cool thing about music and this is there's an infinite amount of variables,
Yeah.
so like no drummer plays the same, no guitar is the same, no, I mean, you could change the mic pre or the compressor or the cable or the pedal, like anything. There's an infinite amount of possibilities, and I think that that makes it so just fun. Like it makes it super fun, and I have fun during the entire process. I mean, probably the toughest thing for me is tracking guitars, because I'm a guitar player and I'm very, very strict when it comes to tuning, timing, intonation across the board there. Like it's probably the most tedious part of the process for me.
Yeah.
The most fun is probably going to be vocals, just because of the back and forth that you have to have with a vocalist, and then the relationship you establish. You always kind of come up with these cool inside jokes and just hang. And yeah, I mean, Logan, our singer, he and I, we knew each other, because he lives in Wilmington where I live, and we had known each other through local bands for years, but we had never really gotten close. And throughout this whole process of being in this band, I mean, we've really become very close friends. And I mean, it's once again about establishing those relationships. I got a little friend coming to hang.
Yeah.
Come on, Squish. I am also a mega dog fan.
Yeah, obviously. Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah, she's my co-producer.
Okay.
Yeah.
You are nothing without the studio, dog.
Yeah, I've had her since she was a puppy, and she's about to be 10. So
bless her.
She's got a lot of co-production credits under her belt.
That's amazing.
Come on, come say hi. Come on, say hi.
Let's see. Yay! Hi there.
Hey, kiss. All right, go couch. She that's her spot.
Here it is. Amazing. Oh, that's fantastic. That's so cute.
Yeah.
Maybe are you used to having a pet? Like
I've always had dogs. My first dog, I had her for 14 years, and yeah. So, and like I said, Lee's coming up on 10. So it's I'm a dog life guy.
That's how it should be. That's amazing.
A dog don't show.
True. True. In terms of music and in terms of your production activity, like that's a question that I always like to discuss with people such as yourself. Being like such a big part of what you do and such a big part of your daily routine in terms of working on projects and on recording sessions and stuff like that. Are you still able to like just casually enjoy listening to music? Or do you have like these sort of professional moments where you just can't do it and you're just focusing on the little tiny details that you're usually working on?
Well, I mean, I still love to listen to new music, and I make it a habit. Now that everything is basically at your fingertips all the time, I can listen to anything that I want to all the time. And so I have a guilty pleasure for like Finnish rock bands. Like I'm a huge fan of that band, His Infernal Majesty.
Yeah.
And I like this band called Erasmus and 60. It's like all those guys, like I really dig that melancholy sound. Like, and you can definitely hear it in our stuff because it had a huge influence on me in like certain parts of my life. And so, I mean, I always kind of gravitate towards certain genres and certain tonalities, man, but I listen to everything and will listen to music outside of the studio. Like, I mean, whenever I leave the studio and I'm going to go get food or, go wherever, I always have, playlists rocking in the car. 24/7, and because it is my life, and it's like it's not just something that's passive. I'm always actively seeking and looking and searching for that feeling, like something to make me feel something. So
I see. And do you have like these moments of oversaturation where you're just like, okay, you know, I'm working on music, I'm listening to music, I just need a break and I need to focus on something else? Or is it just like a recharging process for you constantly in terms of, you know, always being there?
yeah, sometimes I'll like do a podcast,
Yeah.
and just kind of shake it up, because sometimes, yeah, you do have to kind of give your ears a break, especially if you've been working, for 6 to 8 hours. You're like, okay, I need to not hear, music right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I get that, and I'll shift over to a podcast, or sometimes I'll read. I do a lot of reading as well, and I did play a lot of video games, but it's kind of gone to the wayside here lately just because of how busy I've been. But I love to play video, like mega nerd over here.
Okay. So I really want to focus on that part in terms of the, you know, the different activities that you mentioned in terms of podcasts and reading and games and so on. But just to finish off on the music side,
Yeah.
Because this is something that I'm really curious to hear from you as well in terms of all the pretty things, especially when it comes from, you know, from musicians such as yourself and the other guys from the group with great experience. Like, what do you feel is, you know, different and for you in terms of being in all the pretty things and creating music over there in comparison with all of your previous experience in bands and creating music? What makes it different for you? Like, what excites you in it in comparison with everything that you've done before?
That is a fantastic question, and I have your answer. And it is this project is the first project where I have been absolutely fearless with every decision that I've made. And if that preconceived notion of being judged by other people, or just if, is this part a little too progressive, or is this part going to work, or like we're just fearless. Like we are just throwing it all out there. Like if we want to put it out, if we want it to be in the song, we're going to do it. And it's done tastefully. It's not like we're just throwing random things and hope it sticks. Like it's very calculated, and we've really developed a system for it. But fearlessness is the takeaway there. That's what puts me like on fire for this project, is because it's like I'm finally to the level of where it feels like I'm making hard, fast decisions that relate exactly to what I'm trying to deliver as a musician and a producer at the same time. Because melding those two mindsets for me sometimes has been difficult. Like I've got two sides of my brain fighting, like this should work, this won't work. But right now that's all gone, and we're just going. Like we know our direction, we have a concise vision, and we're fearless about getting there.
Honestly, if this answer doesn't excite people and make them to listen to your music, I don't know what will. That's such an interesting response, you know?
Yes,
absolutely. Such a
making it for you, so hang out with us.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. Would you say, does this mean that this is like the music that you're creating there is the best version of yourself? Would you say that? In terms of your,
right now, it is a very accurate representation and reflection of where I am in my personal life. And I could probably say the same for everyone else.
Fantastic.
We are just dialed in, and we all know exactly what we want to do. And we all think that we're doing something that's a little bit kind of off skew, and a little bit, it's different enough to catch your ear and make you go, maybe these guys will make me feel something.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool.
In terms of in terms of creating music, and I guess in general, in terms of expressing yourself, what would you say are your main influences? Like, is it life? Is it personal experiences, or is it more like in terms of appreciation towards the craft, in terms of having a passion to create something memorable? Like, how does it work for you in your brain? I'm really curious to hear that.
Hmm. As an artist, I think that when I'm writing,
Mm-hmm.
I really try to kind of set the tone, like, of what I want to create. So if I want to write a melancholy song, there's obviously the technical ways to get there, via tempo, chords, melody. And so I try to establish this direction in my mind, and I try to, using my, technical knowledge as a producer or as a musician, try to steer towards that. Ultimately, with that goal ties back in, like, I want you to feel this way, and I have to be able to get this out of me through all of this stuff
Mm-hmm.
out of two speakers and make you feel that way, or hopefully make you feel that way. But the takeaway sometimes is that, people can pull different things from different songs that I never would have thought. There's a lot of personal vibes on our record, which is almost done. It's at mix right now, but there's a lot of personal vibes on that record because, I've been through a lot of hell during the past few years, which everyone has with, the whole COVID lockdown. But, I lost my brother, and I went through a really bad breakup. And so a lot of that, I think, came out of me almost subconsciously in the process. And I think that you'll hear it whenever you listen to the whole work. It is a body of work. It's not just the singles, like kind of how the market is. Like, we wanted to deliver a solid full-length record that is an experience and is a journey. And I think that's going to kind of resonate. And I think that some of that pain that I've experienced and other members of the band have gone through as well, I think you're going to hear it.
Firstly, really want to say that I'm really sorry for your loss, and
No, man, I appreciate it.
Yeah, as a person, I sort of, especially in the last few years, I've been pretty much through the same sorts of situations as the ones that you've mentioned. So I can, very much sympathize with that.
And just about how we get it out of us, like, everybody's suffering, no matter what. Everyone's suffering somehow, and it's just like, what vehicle are you gonna use to deal with it or get it out of your soul? And this is the way that I just kind of figured out how to do it.
Literally, that was my question as well, in terms of, like, is it natural for you to express your emotions through music? Does it come almost instinctively, or is it something that you need to, like, consciously go through in terms of just get it out?
Man, and this is like more, I mean, it is pretty much across all, methods of, but live especially, it's almost like I go to a different universe, like it's almost like a persona that I don't even know where it comes from, but it just comes out. I'm typically more of like a laid back, super chill, mild mannered person in my day to day. But when I get on stage, it's just like, it just flows out of me, and there's no experience like that. I've never been able to replicate it. I've done a lot of cool shit in my life, but I've never been able to get those things out of me other than being on stage playing my guitar, and with people I love, playing music that I love to play.
Yeah, there's something so I don't know, enchanting about this whole process that you've mentioned, in terms of just, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, I sometimes feel very sorry about, people not being able to experience that themselves, because it's such a strong and powerful emotion. It's as you said, it's like nothing else in the world, I guess.
You're right about that. And I think that, whenever COVID happened and everything shut down and people weren't able to go and experience live music in whatever capacity, be it a huge concert or an acoustic, at your brunch table, somebody playing in the background. I think that people realized how absolutely important it was to them and to their happiness. And now that, we're all co-producers got something to say. Now that we're back to quote unquote normal, I think people are really coming out in droves because they missed and they realized how crucial it was for that live music component, because there's an energy and something that just happens that you can't define or replicate. It's just magic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, okay. So let's move to the other part that I've mentioned. I'm really curious to hear about all of your other interests, especially in literature and games and whatnot.
Well, I like my melancholy. I'm a big Edgar Allan Poe fan. I like all the Tolkien stuff. We're speaking of literature, obviously. Who else am I into? I'm into a lot of self-study books as well, which I think a lot of people are these days. I really dig some of the perspectives of Dr. Jordan Peterson. I think, well, who else do I really dig right now? Who else am I into? I'm reading Slash's book right now. Dave Grohl's book was great. Matthew McConaughey has a book out that's awesome. So many random things I'll get my hands on, and it's always going. Big Stephen King fan. Stephen King.
Oh, nice.
And then so that kind of covers like what's going on literally, literaturally.
Nice.
But yeah, so what else would you like to know?
Favorite Stephen King book? I'm very interested to hear that.
The Shining.
The Shining, nice.
Oh yeah, nice. That book is terrifying.
It is, to be fair. In terms of podcasts, like what sort of topics are you into? Like what sort of podcast are you listening to?
I do a lot of health and wellness, a lot of fitness podcasts. I'm really into diet and exercise, and how you can manipulate your diet to change the outcomes of your overall health and well-being. So I listen to a lot of guys like Thomas DeLauer's great. Sean T actually has a great podcast. Who else am I into that's great for health and wellness? It's not coming to me off the top of the head. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I do there's this guy named Dr. Sten Ekberg. He has a great health and wellness podcast. Dr. Eric Berg, he's got a great podcast, got a great YouTube channel. So yeah, a lot of health and wellness, a lot of dietary augmentation for well-being, like I'll typically get into.
Gotcha. And like in terms of you mentioned video games as well. I'd love to hear your favorite ones too.
Oh man. I'm a mega nerd, and I'm like the kid that hung on to all of his stuff since he was a kid. So basically I've got all of the old school NES, Super NES, Sega Genesis, GameCube, Xbox. I mean, and I've held on to my collection, so it's a little ridiculous. But right now, I think we just picked up a Switch for the household, so we're kind of jamming on Legend of Zelda and Metroid Prime Remake. So that's where we're at right now, and we'll be there for a minute.
So the old school stuff, that's amazing. That's fantastic. Are you into like comics and movies and this?
Oh yes. I'm a big Batman fan. Actually, here we go. Big Batman fan.
Nice.
But so I read a lot of the Batman comics. A huge Ninja Turtles fan as well. Those are like those original Ninja Turtles comics are just so cool before it got really Saturday morning cartoony.
Yeah.
Which is fine, because that's how I initially found out about the Turtles as a kid. But and then the Marvel stuff's great. I haven't really been prescribing to the movies here lately, because I'm in the studio and not the theater. But yeah, I dig all the Marvel stuff. Big Star Wars guy. So if you if the word nerd could be attached to something, that's probably what I like.
That's great. What do you think about the new Batman movie? Have you watched it?
The newest one? Oh, it was fantastic. It was like the perfect blend of like Seven, like the movie Seven with Brad Pitt. It was like, it had that vibe happening. It really got into Batman's actual detective side, which is big in the comic books and has never really been exemplified in a movie. So I was a huge fan of it. I think I've seen it like 5 or 6 times now.
It's great. There's so much David Fincher in it, as you mentioned, in terms of Seven and Zodiac and all of that. It was great.
Oh, It was just so wonderfully acted, directed. And I was a little skeptical about Pattinson being the Batman, but after the first like 30 minutes, I was like, nope, he's got it. We're good.
Likewise, I was really sort of pessimistic towards it. Not as much as many people who are like, "Oh, this is the guy from Twilight."
Yeah,
So I knew he's a good actor, but I was really not sold on him being that Batman that we all wanted. But it
yeah.
was so good. It was
Well, I
fantastic.
have never seen a second of Twilight, so I wasn't going in with that
Yeah,
preconceived like mentality,
yeah,
which was probably kind of cool. But I thought it was fantastic. I could not have been happier with it.
definitely. Like DC or Marvel.
Well, Batman's my favorite superhero, but I think I like the universe of Marvel better.
Oh, nice.
So that's tough. But I would probably pick Marvel, even though I love Batman. Sorry, Batman.
I'm pretty much on the same page with you. I
Yeah,
really like Batman, but Marvel in terms of universe, I guess it's
yeah,
more
and
close to myself.
it's just so vast and crazy.
Yeah,
So
and with the comics and the movies, yeah, it's very very nice. Okay, I mean, I really would love to talk to you so much more about all these topics, but I really don't want to, keep you while you have stuff to do.
but
Um,
we got a good hour in.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Hopefully, again, you'll be open to, have a discussion at some point in the future again. I would love that.
Yeah, set it up with Jamie, and we'll definitely do it, Risto.
Definitely. Amazing, amazing. Okay, thank you so much. I had such a great fun and, I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much
It
for
was a
your
lot of fun.
time. Yeah,
It was,
and let's keep in touch and yeah, hopefully I'll talk to you soon.
yeah, man. Do I need to plug the socials or anything?
Yeah, feel free to actually. Yeah, so sorry about not mentioning that. Feel free to promote anything that you like, and we'll just include it in.
Yeah, yeah. So you can find us at All the Pretty Things Official on Instagram. We are available on Apple Music, Spotify, All the Pretty Things, all lowercase, one word together. We've got 2 singles out now, but our new record is at mix and should be coming out maybe later this year. So check us out. Let us know what you think. Add, like, high five, cartwheel.
Nice. Okay. Thank you so much again. Have a great show. Have a
Yeah,
great
man.
day, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon.